Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paraversal Universe on the Inception Radio Network, brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited and the Northwoods Paranormal Resource Center here in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. We're your hosts, Kevin and Jennifer Malek.
Hello, everybody.
And hello to everybody in the IRN chat room. We look forward to your questions and comments as always. IRNchat.com is the link for the chat room, so come join us there. Tonight we're going to be talking to paranormal historian and investigator Allison Jornlin from Milwaukee Ghost Tours. But before we bring her on, we're going to do tonight's shoutouts. Shoutouts go to those folks who and organizations who share our show banners on social media all week. We thank you kindly and appreciate it greatly. Who do we have this week?
All right, this week we have Walt Christos, Thoughts of Christos, Cindy Lou, Bizarro World, Mateo Clark, Cody River, Pang Radio, Casey Jansen, Anna Eskian, Alan Larson, Jeffrey Hale, Cert Paranormal, Don and Brent Elmer, Dark Matters and Mysteries, Brian Seach, Center for Cryptozoological Studies, Jason Bland, Jamie Demlos, Paranormal Soup, Howie Odell, Orion Effect, Shawnee Michael, Oshkosh Paranormal, Steve Foster, and James Mordecai. And of course, everybody in chat.
Yes, it's always good to see the regulars and new people in chat as well. Hey, alrighty. So tonight's categories are ghosts and haunted places and urban legends. Tonight's guest is paranormal historian and investigator Allison Jornlin from Milwaukee Ghost Tours. She also does lectures on these subjects. Jen and I have seen her speak at the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference and also at the Chicago Ghost Conference, and we enjoyed those very much. She also won the 2016 Wisconsin Researcher of the Year Award 2 years ago. And of course, she has personally investigated literally dozens, plural, of the recent Chicago flying phantom sightings, boots on the ground, doing quality investigating, trying to verify any of these reports. She'll share findings regarding those investigations with us as we go along. So shall we bring her on?
Yes.
Allison, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for coming on. Okay. Well, since we see here. Yeah, since this is your first time on Paraversal Universe, which was long overdue, by the way, I must say, we're going to start with the most popular question, I think, that we ask those that come on for the first time, which is just, how did you get involved in the paranormal research and investigating, and where did it start for you?
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in the essential questions, like, why are we here? What happens after we die? Are we alone in the universe? I mean, these things always captivated me. From, probably about fourth grade on, I would read anything about, ghosts and Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and UFOs. I mean, this was a pervasive interest of mine. And yeah, I always wanted to do something about it, but it didn't quite know what. And I'm kind of upset that I didn't know, some of the people that I know now, because I think as a kid, as kids, we could have had a great Scooby Gang going, able to connect, at an earlier age. I just wish we could go back in time and do that. But from childhood, these questions have really captivated me. And I just can't believe, they don't captivate more people wanting to know, what lies beyond.
I know you have a keen interest in paranormal history.
Yeah.
Or I forgot to turn the volume down on my phone. It's ringing in the back.
That's okay. You're a popular guy.
Anyways, yeah, I know you have keen interest in paranormal history, as do we. I know you've mentioned paralogians like Catherine and Richard Crowe and Harry Price.
Yeah.
Inspirations like that. Plus, you're an educator. How does all that factor to the Allison equation?
Yeah, well, I am a fourth grade teacher, and so I'm warping young minds on a daily basis, or shaping young minds depending on how you look at it. But yeah, kids love this stuff, and I love it too, and so I mean that really works hand in hand. Exploration of the unknown and learning really go together well. I find that this sense of inquiry and this wonder, that I try to inspire kids with as well. Really in the classroom, being into the paranormal, and having lots of friends in the paranormal, it's what you use to be a classroom rock star, really. So, as I said, it works hand in hand, and definitely researching those who have gone before in paranormal research inspires me as well, because I think we can learn so much from those that were there before us, and we shouldn't forget the past. We don't want to be doomed to repeat the past. Instead we can learn from it and stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's what I try to do.
It amazes me how many people out there in the paranormal don't realize how far back some of this stuff goes.
Yeah.
And there are people out there that don't realize it's been studied academically, and just all kinds of things. And it's and you do. And the first time I came across any of your work, that was the very first thing I noticed. I'm like, wow, who is this? I got to check this out.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I'm glad that you appreciate that, because I think a lot of people lose sight of the past, and they're just looking at today, which there's a lot you can learn today, but don't forget all the people who have made contributions in the past. I mean, they can enrich what you're learning right now, and I think as a whole, our society doesn't much appreciate what happened, maybe even 6 months ago or a few years back. When you go a few decades, it's surprising how much people have forgotten. And then if you go even further back, 100 years, 200 years, it's really, people treat it like ancient history. When it's really not that long ago, and like Victorian times for, the Victorian age, for instance, still influences so much of our thinking today, and most people just don't even realize that at all. I think in other countries, like in Europe, there's more of an appreciation of the past, but here in the United States, it's really anathema, and I'm not quite sure why that is, but I think we have to connect with the past, and with the spirit of those who have gone before, either actually connecting with the spirits that have gone before, or metaphorically, you still can learn something.
And stuff still, like this old stuff, and I noticed a lot. Old stuff that gets buried and forgotten about will get rediscovered. And this happens, I think, in all the areas of the unknown and unexplained. For me, it's cool as a paranormal historian also to find, come across something like just not even 2 weeks ago. Jennifer and myself came across mob ties to Summerwind. nobody had ever talked about this, and here it is in a old book by Tom Hollis, who is the Northern Wisconsin's original paranormal historian, I guess. That's how I refer to him. And here it's right in this book, and everyone's forgotten about it, and it's an old book on our shelf, and just decided to page through it again after, not reading it for years, and it's like, bam, it's just right there, and it's just, wow. And that happens all the time.
Yeah, we can't afford to, lose sight of that stuff. There's so much in history that can inform what we're doing right now, and more people really need to have an appreciation for it. I'm glad that you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're also, I would say, very practical and that's what I'm looking for. Just down to earth. You talked a little bit about the balance between the skeptical scientific method side and, let's say, the parasociology or even metaphysics. That balance in between them, I guess. That healthy medium that I see you sometimes talk about.
Well, I mean, I really struggled with that personally. As you know, being involved in the paranormal, you're gonna get it from both sides. You're gonna get people coming to you with wild claims all the time that, it's tough. I mean, don't get me wrong. I really want to believe. I really, really do. But, I don't want to delude myself. I want to go after things where there's really a basis for discovery there. I don't want to make things up. And, I don't want to have, wishing be what I'm doing. I mean, I want it to be there, right? And if it's not there, it's not. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I just mean we have to accept that, sometimes with the paranormal, you're going to be able to, find something, and sometimes you won't, and that's okay. So, but as I said, I've really struggled myself with this balance because, like I said, you'll have people coming at you with wild claims, and then there's people that are just perfectly willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater, which isn't valid either, and that I think people just give so-called skeptics who are really cynics a little bit too much airtime because just denying everything isn't a valid approach either. Because, for a while, I think I did that. I had become, so jaded with people's claims and just seeing, how ridiculous things can be. And then I began, having extraordinary experiences and just discounting them and explaining them away. And thankfully now I've had enough experiences to be able to say, you know what, there is some there. There is something going on. And that doesn't mean I believe everything, but it doesn't mean I give room for the extraordinary. And I think we all have to.
What a matchup!
And what a team, Mike. Metro PCS and the iPhone SE for $0 on a network that covers 99% of people in the U.S. Oh, impressive.
Play with the best. Switch to Metro PCS on an unlimited LTE plan and get a 32-gig iPhone SE for $0. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax. Claim based on talk and text. Not valid for active numbers currently on the T-Mobile network or active on Metro PCS in the past 90 days. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Do that. We all have to say, you know what? There are things still to be discovered, and there is something to some of these claims, and we shouldn't just throw it out and go in the whole James Randi camp where we just disbelieve things as a matter of course. I mean that's a diluted point of view as well, and you gotta drive yourself into the center and stay there, stay on the fence, not teetering towards either side, but, looking straight ahead. And that's what I try to do.
Well said. So I'm going to tie the next question into the following question.
Okay.
I guess I'll start with the first question, and we can get to the second question after you answer the first question. And that is, and I've seen you write about this too. And this is something else I have a common interest in. And the question is, what fascinates you the most regarding culture and parasociology?
Well, that's a big one. I think, okay, so what I would say is cross-cultural connections. Like, I'm really into stories of the little people because even though people think, I'm sure people are listening right now saying, whoa, fairies, that's crazy. And hey, I'm not saying they definitely exist, but I am saying, wow, look at the fact that, we have in the United States, indigenous cultures, native people who have stories of these others, these beings that live beside us that they call the little people, or various terms equating to that. And then, of course, you have Ireland with their rich history of fairies, and then you look at Iceland, and there are people there. There's a majority of the population there in Iceland which believes in elves. And I was interviewing for my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Mothman. Of course, there's a lot of Mothman videos on there, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit. But there's also a playlist for other paranormal interviews. And one of the interviews I did recently was I interviewed the leader of the headmaster of the elf school in Reykjavik, Iceland.
Oh, wow.
And his name is Magnus, and he is a paranormal investigator and has been for many, many years, since his college days. And he's now an elder, and he's talked to me about Icelandic beliefs and the Icelandic belief in elves. And he said, Allison, the reason why we believe in elves is this is a very close-knit culture. And everybody here in Iceland knows someone who has had a real experience with elves. That's why they cannot shake it. They still hold to that belief, even though a large majority of the population believes that there's no God. I mean, they're atheists, but they believe in elves. And the reason for that is, even though they're rational, they cannot deny something that they've grown up with in their families and through their friends. This knowing that elves are real and that elves have real relationships with families over there. And, this is something that has gone on for centuries. So, I think that's what fascinates me the most. That's one example of these cross-cultural connections as they relate to the paranormal. And, you have these diverse cultures which essentially believe the same thing and have the same type of stories. Now, you got to look closely at that because, people in Iceland, they weren't necessarily talking to, native people here, the Ojibwe and the Menominee. Or in Hawaii, the Menehune, which are essentially, once again, the little people. So these diverse cultures, it's not likely that they came into contact very often, but they had these very, very similar beliefs. Hey, something's probably going on there.
I would say so.
Right.
There's always some basis to every legend.
Right.
And yeah, using the example of, it's like in Ireland, for instance, they routed a whole highway, a complete highway around area because everyone believes the elves or the fairies, the fairy folk live there, and you can go into these woods. People have, paranormal investigating, and all kinds of things happen, all kinds of bizarre things.
Yep. And that's very similar to Iceland as well. They have different construction and road maintenance projects and road building projects that they have rerouted and changed. We're talking about major funds in modern times being spent so that the elves are respected.
Yeah, and the odds, like, for instance, Ireland and Iceland are kind of close, but Hawaii and Iceland not so much.
Right.
And and the same thing around other parts of the world too. So, okay, so one of the reasons I brought up parasociology, not only because you've discussed it, but let's see here. The late Dr. Don Mueller was a parasociologist from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, who investigated the paranormal, of course. One case he worked on, which I know you also know well, and some people out there listening may actually know this one well too. This was featured on Unsolved Mysteries quite a while back. And one case he worked on was the haunted Tallman House. And
right.
Can you walk us through the history of this a little bit? Because I think it's totally fascinating. And I just read the article you wrote not too long ago. I thought, well, I want to ask her about this.
Yeah. So this was a big case in the 1980s. So 1987 to 1988, there was a family of the last name Tallman who was living in Horicon, Wisconsin. And the children began to report unusual activity in the house. Like the little boy, he had a little radio in his bedroom and reported, that, it was one of those old dial radios, and that the dial kept going up and down by itself. And, there were other manifestations that the children were privy to as well. And then the parents began to experience things. And the most dramatic was when the husband actually came home, and he thought that the garage was on fire. He heard a voice, calling out to him, and it was a pretty dramatic case. And one of the reasons I know about it was just because, of course, that was something that was of interest to me at the time, even back in the 80s, that this was a big case that was, on the news. So I, of course, had my ear to the ground just a little bit at the time. And, then it was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, and it's still a hugely popular episode, even, decades later. But I became involved most recently because, as you said, Dr. Don Miller, and I know it's spelled Mueller, but I've since found from the family that it is actually pronounced Miller. After so many times pronouncing it Miller filled me with chagrin, or Mueller, it filled me with chagrin, but it is Miller. So Dr. Don Miller, he was an associate professor of social welfare at UW Milwaukee, the university here. And I'm sorry to say, even though UW Milwaukee is my alma mater, and I was there at the same time as Dr. Miller was working there, we didn't meet while I was at the university. I'm just so sad that I didn't realize that he was so involved in this at the time. As I said, he was a professor of social welfare, and he also taught a little psychology there. But, my interest in him is as a researcher of the paranormal. So he, like I do now, went all around town here in Milwaukee presenting on haunted locations and claimed to have some 2,000 slides. And I saw these claims in old newspaper articles, from the Milwaukee Journal, Milwaukee Sentinel. And I was like, what? He's got 2,000 presentation slides? Well, what happened? And then, unfortunately, found that, he died in 1994. But subsequently I was able to connect with his family. And they now live in Atlanta, and they invited me down there this summer, and I reclaimed the 2,000 slides. In fact, they're sitting right next to me as I speak to you in 3 big boxes. And in all this treasure trove of slides were these photos of the Tallman House. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of notes at this time. The family's still looking for notebooks or other things that may contribute to our knowledge in the future. But, right now I have these slides, and I was like, whoa, hey, here are some slides from the Tallman House back in 1988. And it shows slides that show the investigators that were there on the scene. Slides that also show the bunk beds. They had these bunk beds which were purchased at resale, and so these bunk beds originally were thought, or were later thought to be the source of the haunting. And after they were removed from the house and unfortunately put into a local landfill, all the activity at the house ceased. So, but I have probably the only remaining photos of the house at that time, the investigators, and these bunk beds.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's just great to be able to connect to paranormal history and, try to reclaim some of that past knowledge.
It's time for a quick commercial break. You are listening to Paraversal Universe on the Inception Radio Network, and we will be back shortly with our guest, Allison Jornlin.
But before we get back to the interview, I'd like to take a minute and thank everybody who makes Paraversal Universe possible, including graphics arts designer Lawrence DeMisa, webmaster Joe Champion, music by Matt Stenz, producer Mike M.J. Lucas, and of course, for God, for granting us this wonderful show and opportunity here to be with you all. This segment is brought to you by Lucas Wellness, the UFO Wisconsin Research Team, and the book Trail of the Sasquatch. We also have 3 Paraversal Universe like pages to check out, and also Jennifer's like page, Jennifer Malek, Psychic Demonologist, and of course the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited like page. Also check out Lake Monstrosities and Ultimate Conspiracies, 2 Facebook group pages we are involved with.
What a matchup!
And what a team, Mike. Metro PCS and the iPhone SE for $0 on a network that covers 99% of people in the U.S. Oh, impressive.
Play with the best. Switch to Metro PCS on an unlimited LTE plan and get a 32-gig iPhone SE for $0. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax. Claim based on talk and text. Not valid for active numbers currently on the T-Mobile network or active on Metro PCS in the past 90 days. See store for details and terms and conditions.
If you have any questions for our guests, go to ironchat.com to go to our live Iron chat room. We can post questions and make comments, and Jennifer will pass those along. So, you still with us, Allison?
Oh, yeah. Happy to be here. Thank you.
For the second half of the show, we're going to discuss the controversial Chicago Flying Phantom. We've covered this topic last year when the reports were counted in the 20s, and the Chicago Flying Phantom Task Force was in its conception. Now it's almost a year later, and there are over 60-plus reports.
Yes.
And yet no conclusive evidence or proof. Between then and now, you were part of that task force. You had some concerns, let's say.
Yes. And then was thrown out on my ear.
Yeah, so you left, and you proceeded to do what no one had done concerning these reports, which was to do the old-fashioned, boots-on-the-ground investigative work.
Yeah. And I think that's so important that, I can't believe nobody else has done it. But I'm the only one who has been to all of the sites. And let me preface that by saying there's 2 new ones now. And actually there's one that has surfaced in the Lake Geneva area as well, or near Whitewater, near Lake Geneva. There have been reports as well. So there's some more work to be done. But as you said, now there's about 62 reports in the Chicagoland area, although there's a map, a Chicago Phantom sightings map, which is maintained by Lon Strickler of the Phantoms and Monsters blog, and used to feature my videos until my feelings about the sightings turned a little bit more inquisitive and skeptical. And when that happened, as I said, there wasn't any room for skepticality, and I was kicked out of the task force, unfortunately. And I just think that as paranormal investigators, we have to be open to diverse beliefs or takes on the phenomena. We can't all be expected to toe the party line, and unfortunately that's what I came up against with Lon Strickler. And I really, when I embarked on the whole Mothman expedition, I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so it wasn't easy for me to every weekend, since about August, go back and forth to Chicago, but it was doable. And I thought, what, if I call myself a paranormal investigator, I better be there with boots on the ground, because it's hard, but it's not impossible. It's close enough that, hey, I should be there seeing what I can see. If there's really a Mothman in Chicago, hey, I want to be there. I want to catch a monster or sight a monster. I mean, this is what motivated me, not to be a cynic about it, but the search for a monster is what really captivated me. So that's what kept me coming back when these sightings were reported on the Phantom and Monsters blog, and then they came up on the map. every weekend I would go to Chicago to these locations, and then I would document the location and the account on video, first as a Facebook Live so that people could ask questions, and then took the videos and archived them on YouTube, and you can go watch them now on youtube.com/Mothman. So you can see all the different locations, sans 2 reports that have just surfaced recently. But I'll be getting back to Chicago in the next couple of weekends to get those on there as well. So you can see the actual location, and you can hear the account and see if the account and the location matches up. That seems to me, basic due diligence. And if you're not doing that, you're not really investigating. It's great to take in witness accounts, but you do have to do more than just take what someone's telling you and throw it up on the web as truth. I mean, you have to look into what you're being told and, see if it matches the basic facts. And if it doesn't, I think you really need to throw it out. And that's not what has been done here with these recent cases.
I was surprised to learn that when it happened that you were kicked out. And why? Because you wanted to do what any good investigator would have done. Like for us, in the society, have an investigator say, "Hey, I want to go, do this and check this out." Like, absolutely, you want to check these out. You want to be able to verify facts, to see if they're credible. And like you said, if they're not, then it's to put it out there and call everything like, and then the other thing too is, why don't we tell us about some of the discrepancies?
Okay, so one of the most glaring discrepancies that really bothers me, because it's still reflected on the map, the sightings map, on the Phantoms and Monsters blog, and also in Lon Strickler's recent book about the Mothman sightings in Chicago. So there's one account that was purported to be from a police officer. Actually, there's a few where police officers were said to be witnesses, but this particular one occurred in Auburn Grisham, which is a neighborhood in Chicago this summer. And so apparently there was a group of people, residents, who spotted a strange winged humanoid on top of the roof of one of the apartment buildings on a certain block. And so then they flagged down a passing police car, and then another report surfaced saying that it was from the police officer. Now this is significant because the person who was interviewed, who said he was a police officer, also said that he filed a police report about the sighting. And so I got excited, because when a police report is cited, that's public information that is freely available under the Freedom of Information Act. And so knowing from my past, at the university, I studied journalism. And so all the time, the students would be tasked with going and checking out the police reports and, writing articles based on recent police reports. So I knew that they would be available. So, of course, I was really sad to find there was no police report. And I was really initially upset when I approached the task force and I said, hey guys, it's mentioned in here that there's a police report. So, who has looked for this police report, and what was the form of the request, and what did you get back? And the reason I ask that is, sometimes, particularly with Freedom of Information Act requests, you have to request it in a certain way to get the response you want. And so I wanted to follow up and, find out what was done, what came of it, and then how I could follow up. And nobody in the group got back to me. So then I went through my own sources. I have a private investigator friend who has sources on the Chicago PD, in the Chicago PD, and he had one of his friends look up the police reports from that night, and he was able to tell me that, okay, look, we had this many robberies, we had this many this and that, and we have no reports that match that sighting. So my question is, if the people in the task force know that, and I have had one person that's still currently on the task force tell me that, hey, it was well known that there was no police report. Okay, so how can we believe this supposed witness then? If he says he filed a police report and there's no police report, why do we still treat his account as gospel and put it on the website and put it in the book? And even go so far as in the book, in Lon's book, he says, well, if somebody's a police officer and they're out there risking their life every day, well, I'm going to believe what they say. Okay, Lon, you don't know that this guy is a cop because you have no proof, and what we told you about the report seems to be a lie. And, why is that not noted anywhere is my question.
Again, I can't help but to go, as you're talking this, like our group, everybody that works on the case, everybody share, we share information with each other and we trust each other.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just it's disappointing that happened.
Yeah.
So
it was very disconcerting because, I expected that I was going to find a monster. I mean, that's what really excited me about it. And instead, what I found was, monstrous tactics. I mean, I think, if you're an investigator, you should investigate. It's not about, well, how many wild claims can I accumulate and put on a website and in a blog? Because if these things are not authentic, then that muddies the water for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And so that's one prime example. But, you can go and watch my videos now and see that, when things don't match up, I let you know right during the video because I'm like, okay, let's follow in the footsteps of the witnesses and see if these things make sense. And, later on, I would meet another investigator, Sam Moranto, who is the head of Illinois MUFON. And he also has found that, a lot of these things don't match up when the witness says, cites that there's a certain phase of the moon or, that there's certain weather conditions. They don't match up with what really happened that day.
Same thing with location, right? Like where they would some of these reports where you get a description of the location, and then you go there and see that it doesn't even match up. Yeah,
I mean there was one report. This was there's a couple of reports on there from 2011, and one of them talked about this 5-story building where one of the witnesses lived, and that the Mothman was at her window essentially, and unfortunately in that area. I went all around. Are there any 5-story buildings? No. And then the report also says that when her boyfriend was coming to pick her up, he went by the park, which is it's Miller Park, and actually I went round and round searching for it, and I had missed it initially because it's a speck. It is a lot between two buildings, and apparently these witnesses saw the Mothman lighting on top of a basketball hoop. And okay, so this little park is a kiddie playground. This is for toddlers, with a swing set and a slide. There is no basketball hoop, and it is a very, very small area. You wouldn't expect to see a Mothman on top of anything there. And so it's just ridiculous when these basic things don't match up. How are you supposed to take the wild claims seriously?
Yeah. And so many too, and that's the thing. Like, I gotta say, something with so many sightings should produce more results physically, metaphysically, especially considering the descriptions we keep hearing, and the 60-some reports. We're talking about a major metropolis area,
right?
How many people are there per square mile, and yet nobody's got this on their phone. No groups have come forward. And the other thing, too, is that I would say in the last 10 years of our society, with the people that we talk to, I could say, conservatively, probably like a quarter of the people that come forward with reports of paranormal activity are willing to talk about it openly. I mean, that's on average, I'd say, Right. And, so the fact that you got all this stuff and nobody, except for I know Jack Blue had found one or two witnesses, and then reports were more for UFO. I mean, after listening to the whole thing, I thought, man, that's more, again, like it sounds more like ufology than cryptozoology.
Yeah, and that was the thing too. It seemed like they were looking. The task force was looking to take anything out of the ordinary and put it in the Mothman or flying humanoid basket, even if it didn't match. There were reports in there of, just seeing like 2 red lights. And, because, they were equating those red lights with red eyes, automatically it's lumped in. When really, when you read the account, it sounds like 2 lights, right? So, that's not a Mothman, okay? You might want it to be because you got a book coming out, but I mean that you gotta put a little bit more rigor into your investigation. And yeah, let's look at that because it just seems too convenient that all of this would happen right in time for Lon Strickler to get out his book right at the 50th anniversary of the Silver Bridge collapse. So December 15th, 1967, and then this year, December 15th, 2017, that was 50 years. So that tragedy is equated with the so-called original Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And so it's just all too convenient that these so many cases would occur just in enough time to write a book real quick and then get it out for that anniversary. It just seems suspicious.
Well, the Mothman accounts in Ohio, you had police reports, you had military presence, you had all kinds of strange lights and other things in there. I mean, they were clearly different. I mean, to me, it seemed different.
Right.
You had people that came forward that were traumatized, several people. And
they came forward to the press. I mean, there were at least 100 accounts, and, most of them, you're able to know the names of the witnesses. They came forward. And, so I think that's why those sightings in, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, I mean, that's why they still, hold so much gravitas even today, is because people were willing to come forward. And, there is a group, a handful of people that have talked to my friend Jack Blue over in Chicago. And here's the problem. There might be some actual authentic accounts coming out of Chicago. But when you let everything in and don't use any discrimination, then how can you tell what's authentic and what's not? I mean, you really can't. This is the principle on which disinformation works. If there's somebody who wants to silence what's going on, well, they've effectively done that by, flooding the field with bogus reports. Because unfortunately, essentially nobody is separating fact from fiction here. So you can't tell what's what. That's the real tragedy is, there could be something real going on, but we can't tell you what it is because, nobody's being discriminating about what's going on. They just throw it all up there.
Well, thank you and Jack and Sam and Jim Heater and a few others who were, very, hey, this isn't cool.
Right.
This has got to be done properly. We only got a few minutes left, and I want to talk about the Hawaii Paracon.
Yeah, so in July 13th through 15th, this July 2018, I'm so proud to have been asked to be involved in the first paranormal conference ever to be planned in Hawaii. So it's going to be in Oahu, and I'm going to be speaking there on cross-cultural connections, like I touched on today. There's more connections between Hawaii reports, extraordinary reports, and the mainland. And so I'm going to be talking about the similarities and differences there. And it's really an international conference. So everybody should just check it out. I mean, you want to go to Hawaii anyway. So go to HawaiiParacon.com. The tickets are very affordable for the actual event. And, we're expecting that there will also be some flight deals coming up with American Airlines offering expanded services to the area, expanded flights, rather. But anyway, yeah, check it out at HawaiiParacon.com. As I said, it's an international conference, so I'll be speaking there. But there's also Greg and Dana Newkirk from Ohio with their Paranormal Museum. They'll be attending and presenting there. We have Fred Fogarty. He's an investigator from Edinburgh, Scotland, who will be reporting on the Mackenzie poltergeist and other Mackenzie poltergeists throughout history, and also hypnotism in the paranormal. And then, of course, it's being planned by Lopaka Kapanui, who runs haunted history tours in Oahu, and he's a native Hawaiian. So he'll be bringing authentic Hawaiian paranormal knowledge. So and we'll also be having local presenters about the Japanese influences on the island and the Yuri and yokai stories that have been introduced to Hawaii from that culture. So it's really going to be an international meeting of the minds and a conference like never before.
That sounds awesome. And if we had the time, we would definitely fly out there and enjoy that sounds good. Tell us about, okay, so you have a radio show. You got to plug that.
Yeah. So you can hear me quite regularly on my brother's podcast, which is called See You on the Other Side. And you can find our episodes, and we're pretty close to like 200 hours of content right now at othersidepodcast.com. So do check that out. Every week, every Tuesday, we have a new episode coming out, and we're soon to interview Nick Redfern about his new book about Slender Man, and we'll add our 2 cents in from being locals as well.
Right. Yeah. That sounds awesome. Let's see. Okay. Thank you so much, Allison. We've ran out of time.
No problem. I really appreciate it.
And we're going to have you back on.
I love that.
Yes, because there's so much more we could talk about. So next week we have psychic profiler Robbie Thomas. The week after that, we have psychotherapist Tom McGuire. To the believer, evidence is overwhelming.
And to the skeptic, there will never be enough.
Thank you. God bless you. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you here next week.
Good night, everyone.
What a matchup!
And what a team, Mike. Metro PCS and the iPhone SE for $0 on a network that covers 99% of people in the U.S. Oh, impressive.
Play with the best. Switch to Metro PCS on an unlimited LTE plan and get a 32-gig iPhone SE for $0. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax. Claim based on talk and text. Not valid for active numbers currently on the T-Mobile network or active on Metro PCS in the past 90 days. See store for details.